When it comes to new developments, it's important not to think about unhelpful metrics like what feels right or what looks nice. Michael Kovacs wrote a great piece for us where he compared city planning to Moneyball. It doesn't matter if someone has a smooth swing. What matters is that he gets on base. Cities should be thinking the same way, but it's not about getting on base. It's about value per acre. It's easy to think that a brand new subdivision that looks nice will help the city, but in reality, cities need to be thinking about productive developments. Does it put the city in a better financial position? Does it get on base? More importantly, how can we scout developments to see if they'll be productive? So I came to Asheville to figure out the answer to this question. How can you make the case for the right kinds of development in your city?
Right, and so these are old city planning books from Harvard University Press from 1931, right? What do you see there? This is value per acre. Like this is straight out of the 1930s. Real rocket science.
Joe is principal of Urban 3, which is a data and analytics firm focused on land value economics. He's joking about this being rocket science because it's the most simple concept, but so many cities have strayed away from this logic. If a city's most valuable resource is its land, then we can't afford to waste it. The best way to cut through renderings and salesy pitches for expensive new projects is to look at it simply. Will it be an efficient use of valuable land?
When we talk about real estate, we use value per acre because it normalizes the revenue of a property. And what we find is that typically people talk about real estate in big numbers, what's the total value, but it misses the point of its productivity. So to use examples that are behind me right here, we've got this pickup truck right here that's a V8. This has the biggest gas tank of all of these three vehicles that are over here. So it's getting the most miles per tank because it's got the biggest gas tank. But you know how silly that sounds to say that this is a better vehicle than, let's say, that Volkswagen over here. Because it gets a bigger miles per tank, right? That sounds silly. Instead, you would say, hey, Joe, we do things on miles per gallon because we want to know what efficiency is. So this Volkswagen is a heck of a lot more efficient, and so is the Subaru, than this pickup truck, right? On miles per gallon. So if we're doing that measurement on a $3 to $4 commodity, why aren't we doing it for a $400,000 to $1 million commodity of a piece of real estate?
All right, so if we know that value per acre is the best way to measure productive and efficient use of space in our cities, then how can we figure out the right kinds of developments that should go on this land?
What's unique about Urban 3 is we're showing the money in how a city operates. So what's behind me here are pieces of architecture, there's humans walking around, there's a tour group on bicycles over here, there's a local brewery, there's restaurants, there's all this commerce, there's this economic activity. These buildings pay taxes, which fund the infrastructure of the sidewalk or the street. There's a cash flow that's happening, but do you see the cash flow that's happening? How do we show people the money of what's happening behind all of this architecture in this community design?
Luckily, Joe and the team at Urban 3 have an answer to this question. To show the money, Urban 3 did a great comparison of a downtown mixed-use building and a Walmart. The downtown mixed-use building is valued at $11 million. The Walmart is valued at $20 million. Remember though, we don't measure miles per tank, but miles per gallon. So let's do that here. If we measure value per acre, this ends up being a landslide victory for the mixed-use building, with Walmart bringing in $6,500 in property taxes per acre, and the mixed-use downtown building giving $634,000 in property taxes per acre. Add in retail tax, residents, and jobs per acre, and it only increases the difference. This used to be common knowledge. Urban 3 exists to reteach people what our great-great-grandparents knew about making successful places.
But the majority of our clients are cities that hire us to look at their fiscal position, where they are with their cash flow, and whether or not their land use patterns can cover their own costs. Having that is a model or a picture helps them communicate to their citizenry. So we're not telling people how to make choices. They just need to see the consequence of their choices. So they have the image to show that.
The models made by Urban 3 show that a mixed-use business district carries the rest of the city. While someone on the outskirts may believe that they're paying their fair share in taxes and that they are the reason why their town is doing well, it's the mixed-use business district that covers the rest of the city's expenses. This comparison shows the total taxable value of an area, the gas tank, if you will. You can see the Biltmore Estate, which is America's largest home, looks like the most productive place on the map. But if you adjust this for value per acre, you'll see that its massive footprint mitigates that value. The most productive places are in the center of town. If you look at this from a 3D view, it becomes even more clear. If a city is evaluating how to develop a piece of land, it should make more of this and less of that. So even if this does make sense, why does it matter? Obviously, there's the financial angle.
We did an analysis of Eugene, Oregon, and just their stormwater system cost them like $450 million if you just go out and pay for it today, like just go build it. And it's happened over time, and it's happened because of the pattern and the way that they grew. So if they had the same amount of square footage of buildings, you get the same revenue from all the buildings paying taxes, but you had more two-story buildings, so you take the square footage and stack it a little bit, and you had more two-story buildings, you'd have half the footprint, which means you'd have half the stormwater need, because water doesn't flow through a building, right? So if you have half the stormwater need, and your stormwater system costs $450 million, you just saved $220 million, right? So if you went back in time and said, how do we want to grow, and what's the best way to spend $220 million, would you have chosen to stretch your city out, or would you have created an after-school program to send every child in the city to Stanford for a summer program? I don't know. Like, did we have that choice?
But there's also a much more human angle here. You can make people-centered places, ones designed to linger in and be enjoyed by citizens and visitors, ones that will last longer than us. And this brings up another important angle. Advocating for productive developments also means protecting them.
So something that felt well here in downtown Asheville is that it shouldn't be unique, but it is.
While many cities were using federal funds to bulldoze historic downtowns and displace minority populations, Asheville didn't have the money to do the former. They've recently been exploring ways to make amends to the communities that they displaced and redlined out.
Different influences influence that city's economy and growth. Asheville, the tourism industry really took off in the 1920s. We became the second largest city in North Carolina. There were over 100 hotels in Asheville back then. We also achieved the highest debt per capita in the entire United States. In the 1920s, we fell flat on our face in the Depression, and it took us until 1976 to pay off our debts. So in a way, by being so far in debt, we couldn't tear any buildings down. So what you have today is this legacy of buildings that were left for us by this civilization that existed in the 1920s.
Let's go 40 years ago to the 1980s. All of this was going to get torn down by that downtown mall proposal. We're standing right in the middle of where the mall was. It was going to go from that street right there all the way up the hill to that street.
When Asheville citizens found out about this plan to flatten downtown to create a mall, college senior and Asheville native Peggy Gardner organized a Wrap of Downtown, which helped people visualize how much space would be destroyed to make this mall. While she claimed it wasn't a protest, it was clearly effective. Asheville was saved from the trendy but now dying mall. One person who was instrumental in making the Asheville that people now love to visit is Julian Price. He fell in love with Asheville when he saw the mountains poking through Walnut Street, and he saw potential in the neglected buildings downtown.
But he was just very, I don't know, he had kind of a little bit of a visionary type attitude, I would say. He wasn't like arrogant, but I think he just really wanted to figure out how to make different communities work. He was just curious about maybe what made a good community.
Maybe you can relate? He decided to live downtown, which, as an independently wealthy person in Asheville at the time, was pretty countercultural.
I guess he just was like, the beauty just bowled him over, and he had a real emotional feeling when he was in Asheville.
So he put his money where his heart was, and he started to invest in local entrepreneurs.
The other thing that he did pretty cool is he bought that building right there and basically contributed it to a lot of businesses, self-help credit union, basically filling the void on the things that were necessary for the community to have access to local financing, business support, stuff like that.
Oh, I know he was a frustrated creative type, big time. He was a big reader and he loved films and, he loved to document.
He took his skills, his passions, and his love for Asheville and combined that to create City Watch, which was a publication dedicated to showing Asheville how they could make their place better.
I think he liked the big and the small. He definitely liked to imagine things big, but he understood that you really have to get down to the details.
Julian embodied the Strong Towns concept of fix the next smallest thing. With his particular skill set and his money, he ended up being an angel investor, but there were so many players in this game to make Asheville a better place. The entrepreneurs, the activists, the politicians.
I actually printed it. I made an Excel spreadsheet of every single person, the amount of years that they put in on different committees and boards. And each row is about a quarter inch big on the printout, and the printout's 12 feet long. It takes a lot of people working collaboratively and collectively going forward. It's not always going to be a love fest. There's going to be fights, and there's going to be a lot of passion. But you have to realize that you're all working together for a common purpose to make a great city, and that cities don't happen by any one person.
I don't know Julian, but I imagine as a troubled creative type, he sometimes wondered if what he was doing would actually make real and substantial change. Millions of people who never met him get to experience the love he had for Asheville every time they see the mountains peek out from the end of the street. I'm tempted to often look elsewhere, whether it be a move or for some giant billion-dollar project to swoop in and make my place better, but that's not how a place comes to be. For millennia, people like Julian took risks, made bets on places that they loved. There will always be people determined to keep their places frozen in time, refusing to improve them for future residents. There will be people who move to places that are already far ahead in doing this work. And there will be people who just let their frustration turn into bitterness instead of action. But don't forget, there will always be people who step up for their towns. People like Joel, who rehabbed local homes incrementally to avoid displacement while improving the neighborhood. Or Kote, who created a coffee shop and gathering place in her neighborhood. And Noah, a high school teacher who started a local conversation in Bloomington, Illinois. I would encourage you to think about how you might fit into your town's story. I mean, how can you not be romantic about that? Quick interruption. We just got confirmation that City Nerd, Alan Fisher, and Active Towns are going to be at the National Gathering, and I'm leading a creator panel with them. So if you want to see that or you want to attend and learn more, you can check out the registration link that's posted in the description and up top. And if cost is an issue for you, if you're a student, if you're a member, or if you're attending CNU, there's discounts for you as well. If it's not the move this year, totally understand, but would also love to see you there.